I knew my sister hated me, but I didn't know how far she'd go until she slid a birthday gift across the table and laughed a DNA test. "Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake," she said loud enough for every fork to stop midair. I swallowed the shame, mailed the kit, and waited. Months later, our family's estate lawyer requested an urgent meeting regarding Grace Ellington. My mother went pale. Naomi stopped smiling, and in that moment I realized something terrifying. They already knew what I was about to find out. Welcome to Martha's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you, right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. Most people picture family as a soft place to land. Mine always felt more like a house with cold floors. Beautiful from the outside, but freezing once you stepped in. Growing up in the Ellington home in Denver, I learned early how to make myself small. I was the quiet child, the one who did her homework without being asked, the one who disappeared into corners, so my mother wouldn't sigh and my sister wouldn't sneer. Even then, Naomi's world seemed to orbit at the center of everything. She had a way of commanding attention without earning it. Loud laughter, dramatic stories, and a talent for turning every room into her stage. My mother, Evelyn, applauded her every move. When Naomi got a B on a test, she was well-rounded. When I brought home straight A's, Mom blinked like she had forgotten who I was for a moment before saying, "That's nice, Grace. Can you help set the table?" By the time I reached 35, I'd built a life far from that house. Austin suited me. Quiet mornings, simple routines, the kind of stability I'd never had as a child. I worked as a financial analyst, dressed in soft, neutral tones, and tried not to think about the constant ache that came from being the forgotten daughter. But when my father, James Ellington, passed away, the gravity of our family pulled me back. He had been the only steady thing in that house, a man of few words but a surprising warmth in the small moments, a hand on my shoulder, a proud nod at my college graduation. I didn't know then that he carried a secret darker than anything I could imagine. 3 months after the funeral, Mom insisted we have a small birthday dinner at the old house. Her voice over the phone was too bright and too rehearsed, as if she were reading lines someone else had given her. When I stepped through the front door, I smelled the familiar mix of lemon polish and old books. The chandelier glowed, but the house felt emptier without Dad's quiet presence. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, flipping through resort brochures, tanned from some recent trip, barely glancing at me as I entered. Mom poured herself more wine than usual, her hands trembling slightly. Something unspoken hung in the air like a storm that hadn't broken yet. I tried asking about the will gently and respectfully. Mom froze, her smile stiff. "We're just not ready yet," she said. But her eyes flicked to Naomi. Naomi smirked like she knew a secret I didn't. Looking back, the dinner was never about celebrating my birthday. It was about setting the stage for my humiliation. The tension that night didn't arrive in one sharp moment. It crept in slowly like a draft under a closed door. Every small detail felt off. Naomi kept glancing at me with this expectant look, as if she were waiting for a cue only she and my mother had rehearsed. Mom's wine glass was never empty, though she barely drank from it. Her fingers just circled the stem over and over, like she needed something to hold on to. Dinner itself was a performance. Naomi talked nonstop about her job, her husband, and her plans to redo her kitchen in a French farmhouse aesthetic. Mom laughed at every comment, even the unfunny ones. When I spoke, the room seemed to dim, like someone turned down the volume of my existence. Halfway through the meal, Naomi leaned back, eyes glinting. "So Grace," she said sweetly, "still working at that same firm in Austin?" Before I could answer, she jumped back into another story about herself. It wasn't a question. It was a reminder that I am background noise. Still, something else simmered beneath her smug expression, anticipation and calculation. When Mom stood to bring out dessert, a small store-bought cake she hadn't even bothered to plate, Naomi pushed back her chair dramatically. "Actually," she said, reaching for a glossy box wrapped in silver paper, "I brought a birthday gift, something I think you'll find enlightening." Mom's face drained of color, but Naomi ignored her. sliding the box across the table toward me like it contained evidence instead of a present. "Go on," she said, her smile razor-thin. "Open it." I peeled back the paper, a strange stillness settling over me. Inside was a DNA testing kit. The room went silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Naomi leaned in, laughing under her breath. "Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake in this family." The words echoed, sharp and deliberate. Mom flinched. I saw it, but she said nothing. The humiliation stung, but the fear in Mom's eyes felt like the real truth slipping through the cracks. Naomi hadn't just insulted me, she'd exposed something she wasn't supposed to say out loud. Later that night in my old bedroom, the walls still painted the soft blue I had chosen at 15. I searched through old boxes like someone looking for proof of their own existence. At the back of my closet, I found an envelope that didn't belong with the others. The dust around it had been disturbed. Recently, inside was a photograph of a younger Evelyn holding me as a baby while standing next to a man I didn't recognize. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, "Forgive me." My hands shook as I took pictures of everything. Then I turned to the DNA kit Naomi had delivered like a weapon. She had wanted me to take it. She had wanted something to happen. Fine. I mailed it the next morning. Not because Naomi wanted me to, but because I needed to know what truth she was so eager to weaponize. The results arrived 5 weeks later on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk in Austin when the notification appeared on my phone. I expected dread. What I didn't expect was clarity. Sharp, cold, and undeniable. No biological relationship was detected with the Ellington family. My breath hitched. But I kept reading. A suggested match to the Hartman lineage appeared, a name I had never spoken or heard, suddenly tied to me by blood. It didn't hurt the way I imagined. It felt like confirmation of something I had always sensed. I was a guest in my own childhood, never a daughter. What shook me more came next. When I sent the results to our family group chat, just a screenshot and a simple question. "Does anyone want to explain this?" My phone buzzed almost instantly. Mom called, sobbing not from remorse but from fear. "Grace, sweetheart, please delete that. You don't understand. This is complicated. Things happened a long time ago. We moved past them." She never apologized or addressed the decades I spent feeling like a burden. She just begged me to bury the truth again. But Naomi didn't call. She texted just 4 words. "Well, now you know." She seemed cold and satisfied, as if she'd been waiting half her life for the moment I discovered I didn't belong. That night I called her, shaking with questions. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice dripping with irritation. "Why, Grace? Why now?" I demanded to know why she pushed this and why she humiliated me. She laughed softly, a sound that hit like ice. "Because I've kept this family secret for 20 years. Because Mom owed me. Because you've played victim long enough. And now the right people will finally get what they deserve." She hung up. Those words clung to me like smoke. The next morning I started asking quiet questions of family, friends, and old neighbors. What emerged chilled me. Naomi had been digging for months, meeting estate lawyers and talking as if Dad's estate already belonged to her. I needed help, so I hired an attorney, Sarah Ang, known for her work in complicated inheritance disputes. I brought her everything. The DNA results, the photograph, screenshots of Naomi's messages, and the fear in Mom's voice. Sarah listened and said finally, "Your instincts are right. Someone is building a case to erase you." 3 days later, I got the call that changed everything. Mr. Dalton, our longtime estate lawyer, sounded unusually formal. "Grace, your father left instructions for a will reading under specific circumstances. Those circumstances have now been met." The morning of the will reading in Denver felt colder than I remembered, like a warning. Sarah and I arrived early at Mr. Dalton's office. We chose seats out of the direct line of fire, and Sarah whispered, "Observe everything. Speak only when necessary." Mom arrived next, looking exhausted and clutching her purse with both hands. She didn't greet me or meet my eyes. Then Naomi entered, her heels clicking sharply with theatrical confidence. She wore an expensive suit and brought her own attorney, a man known for aggressive estate litigation. Naomi gave me a slow, smug smile. Grace, she said, as if greeting someone irrelevant. She believed she had already won. Mr. Dalton entered last, carrying a thick folder. He looked at each of us and said, I want to note that James Ellington left explicit instructions for how this reading should proceed. He anticipated complications. Dalton opened the folder and read, I, James Robert Ellington, declare this my final will and testament. I leave 70% of my estate, including the family home, investment accounts, and assets to my daughter, Grace Ellington. Silence snapped across the room. Naomi shot to her feet. She is not his daughter. We have DNA proof. She has no legal... Dalton held up a hand. Please sit. There is more. He continued reading. I have known since Grace was 2 years old that she is not my biological child. I chose to raise her anyway. I choose to leave her my legacy because she alone has proven worthy of it. Naomi's complexion drained to a pasty gray. Dalton wasn't finished. 8 months before his death, Mr. Ellington hired a private investigator to document any attempts to manipulate or interfere with his estate. He placed a stack of documents on the table, payments, withdrawals, and meeting logs demonstrating Naomi's efforts to pressure her father and unauthorized withdrawals, totaling $50,000 during his illness. Naomi's attorney stiffened, but Dalton cut him off. Additionally, the investigation documented consultations with 3 estate lawyers and the purchase of a DNA test mailed to Naomi's home address and gift-wrapped. Dalton added. Naomi's eyes widened. That's ridiculous. That was a joke. Dalton then set down a handwritten note from my father. Naomi, I know what you've been planning. I watched you try to manipulate your mother. I hoped you would choose differently. These consequences are your own doing. Naomi's attorney whispered harshly for her not to contest, citing a no-contest clause that would make her lose everything. But Naomi spiraled, shouting that it was fraud. Sarah stood and stated firmly that any contest would trigger the no-contest clause and require repayment of approximately $200,000 in outstanding loans. Naomi's face twisted. That's not a loan. He gave me that money. Not according to the estate records, Dalton replied. Mom finally whispered for Naomi to stop, but Naomi hissed, This should be mine. I'm the real daughter. I stood slowly and told her, You didn't stay, Naomi. You controlled. You threatened. You built your life on secrets you never earned. Dalton then opened a smaller envelope addressed to me. Inside was a letter from my father. Grace, you spent your life believing you were invisible. You were not. I saw your strength, your kindness, your integrity. You were my daughter not by blood, but by choice. Naomi finally understood this was her defeat, crafted by the man she underestimated most. The legal fallout was fast. Naomi's attorney withdrew, and when she tried to contest the will anyway, the judge dismissed it within minutes. Her inheritance vanished. The $200,000 loan was converted into personal debt, and she had 1 year to repay the $50,000 unauthorized withdrawals or face legal action. For the first time, Naomi looked small. Mom came to see me a week later in Austin. She told me everything, the truth about my biological father and the guilt she carried. I listened but didn't reach for her, as some wounds required distance. She said she wanted to make things right, and I replied that making things right starts with letting me live without carrying her secrets. In the months that followed, I stepped back from Denver entirely. I managed the estate, settled accounts, and built a quieter life in Oregon where the lies couldn't reach me. Some endings aren't loud. They're about choosing peace over pain. If you've ever been the overlooked one, know this. You deserve better than the people who failed to see you.